For the week of Monday, December the 3rd, 1990. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Despain. Don't you believe anybody who tries to tell you the racing season is winding down. Several forms of racing still going strong. And, Bob, we have one series that's just now getting... Terry Labonte celebrated his reunion with car owner Billy Hagan by winning the rain-shortened Christmas 400 stock car race on the Calder Thunderdome Superspeedway near Melbourne, Australia yesterday. Approaching the midway point in the race, Labonte was leading Ken Schrader at the wheel of an ex-Junior Johnson Ford when the Australian skies opened and rained out the race. American Ron Esau was third, driving his own Winston West car. Last week we told you about the NASCAR driver talent search. Well, it's worth noting that Steve Cosson, who was the winner of the Australian portion of that competition, was also the 13th place finisher at the Thunderdome.
This Friday evening in New York City, Dale Earnhardt will collect $1 million from R.J. Reynolds for his 4th Winston Cup championship. Now, that big check, along with his other postseason bonuses, lifted Earnhardt to a record $3 million plus in 1990 season earnings. 3 other drivers, Mark Martin, Jeff Bodine, and Bill Elliott, all won more than $1 million this year. The Waldorf Astoria will again host the Winston Cup banquet, and this year ESPN will bring it to you live Friday night starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Earnhardt's sponsor, GM Goodwrench, was also a big winner this season, according to a newsletter which monitors television exposure received by companies involved in racing. The sponsor's report says Goodwrench visibility in Winston Cup telecast this year was worth nearly $4.7 million.
The last year's Winston Cup champion has been busy at work down in Daytona. Buddy Pittman reports on Rusty Wallace's new team and his quest for a second championship.
After winning the Winston Cup title in 1989, Rusty Wallace would have to settle for a 6th place points finish in 1990. He had 2 wins on the year, one at Sears Point and the second at Charlotte. Rusty is already back at work, however, looking to 1991 with a revamped team and big plans.
The new team is great so far. Everything's looking good. Basically, we got a new owner, myself and a fellow by the name of Don Miller, and somebody else we're going to announce later at our at December 7th at the Waldorf Astoria at our major announcement about the new team for next year. But the players are all the same, a lot of the same crew members, so I think you still see the same championship teams you've seen in '89 here. But, hey, we're taking Daytona and Talladega pretty serious, and we never took it too serious before.
Rusty and the crew were at Daytona recently, putting his Pontiac through the paces with hopes of improving his performances on the super speedways.
We're doing an awful lot of pre-race testing, things that I've never done before. Sway bar changes, shock changes, a lot of computerization in the car, checking G-forces, checking degrees of angle down the straightaway, checking front-end lift, downforce, just a lot of aerodynamic and chassis functions that we're trying to get out of the way right now.
Many think that with the season just completed, the drivers are taking time off to relax, but relaxation is the furthest thing from Rusty Wallace's mind.
I think that I've got all the confidence in the world I can win the championship in '91. I feel like I'm a legitimate candidate at this time with the speeds that I'm running in my car for the pole, for the Daytona 500, and for the race win, and so I'm pretty excited about it.
Rusty says that he hopes that blending some of the old with some of the new will be his team's key to success in 1991. At Daytona International Speedway, Buddy Pittman, Motorweek Illustrated.
Thanks, Buddy. It'll take a while to get used to seeing Rusty Wallace in car number 2, but as an owner, that will be his new car number.
The Japanese are in the unique position of having both a passion for racing and the wherewithal to indulge themselves like no one else in the world. The latest proof came during the recent opening of the world's most lavish racetrack. It's called Autopolis, built on the southern Japanese island of Kyushu at a cost of some $400 million. Befitting the price tag, the opening ceremonies went on for nearly 2 weeks, climaxing in the ribbon cutting, featuring members of the Benetton Formula One team, which is sponsored in part by the track. Now, buying a track membership entitles you to all the amenities, including the use of a country club and an art gallery, which includes Van Gogh's painting Irises, purchased at a cost of $89 million. Now, following a traditional Japanese Shinto ceremony, the track rolled out a selection of racers to be featured on the new track, including that old favorite, sumo carts. New Ferrari man Jean Alesi was among the real racers on hand, as was 3-time world champ Nelson Piquet, who turned in a few demonstration laps in last year's Benetton in between victories in this year's model. The Japanese also have a yen for open-wheel racing American style, and so Johnny Rutherford and Stan Fox and a dozen other Indy veterans were brought in, given red carpet treatment, and turned loose in a set of USAC Sabre cars. Following a few laps in a Formation A for Autopolis, get it, the visitors turned in a few laps at somewhat greater speed speed and the stock block machines that will form the basis of a new Japanese series next year. Once the Indy Act was complete, the show moved on to a Japanese specialty, motorcycles, both the road racing Grand Prix machines at their wheel-standing best and the motocross variety, running on, you guessed it, a purpose-built motocross course that is part of the track. Now, if Indianapolis is the world's most famous racetrack, Autopolis is easily the most expensive and tasteful. It is yet to host a real race, but rumors have started that the track will be the site of a second Formula One event in Japan to be called the Grand Prix of Asia.
Nice looking place. When we come back, we'll have a visit with NASCAR's Grand National Champion. Stay with us. My guest today is Chuck Bown, and he can give you the formula for success in stock car racing. Marry Herschel McGriff's daughter, pack up your family, move them all the way across the country, and 15 years later you're an overnight success. Tell me how you came to make the decision when you were, what, 23 years old, to basically pack everything up from Portland, Oregon and move to the Carolinas. That had to be a tough decision.
Well, it really was. I was leaving a lot of security and all my family, my wife's family, but I wanted to drive race cars for a living, and I knew that racing is biggest in the Southeast, and I knew I had to leave Portland, Oregon to try to pursue that career. And, you know, like you say, 15 years later, I'm still working on it, but it's been going pretty good.
You had been the Winston West champion, so you had acknowledged credentials. Before we find out about the second half of your career, I want to know about the love life. I want to know how you got along with the family rivalry. Your dad and Herschel McGriff were like this on the racetrack, and you ended up marrying Herschel's daughter. Tell me that story.
Yeah, in the early 70s, it was kind of difficult when Debbie and I were going out, and first couple of years we were married. My father and her father were the guys to beat on the West Coast in those days, and there was a time that there was a crew chief that was kind of being bid against from one family to the other, and it made life a little bit difficult for Debbie and I, but we weathered the storm like we usually do, and things have been going great.
You came back, you had some tough years, you sold tickets at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Is that a true story?
Yeah, that's a true story. It was one of the only jobs I could find that I could take off and go racing when I got an opportunity, but I don't really miss selling those tickets, to tell you the truth, but Humpy Wheeler took pretty good care of me while I was in Charlotte trying to make a living. But then, as you know, I took a venture up north and, you know, did some racing up there, and, you know, heck, I've raced almost every racetrack in the United States now, I think, but, you know, I'm back where I've always really wanted to be, in the Southeast, and racing NASCAR, Busch Grand National.
You had a lot of success up in New England racing the Coors Tour at that time. What was the key to getting with a Southeastern team that had the potential to win championships?
Well, I guess the key was somewhat unknown right at first. I liked Jeff and Hubert Hensley's attitude right from the very beginning when we talked about it. But after we started going to races, I found out what a hungry race team they were, and that they indeed liked to win as much as I did. And I think that's what really worked for us. When we signed on to drive, they wanted me to drive because I was experienced, and we didn't have a sponsor. But then we got Pontiac support and Nescafe's coffee support, and then we were off and running. And it's been a great 2 years, and we're looking forward to the future.
The payoff, of course, was the Busch Grand National Championship, but I'm curious about your own motivation. It took 12 years to get from the point where you were kind of the ragtag family looking for a job to sitting at the top of this heap. Did you ever give up on yourself? Did you ever think, gee, maybe I'm not going to cut it?
Well, I never wondered if I had the ability, but you always wonder if the opportunities are going to come or not, because to be a good race car driver, it takes more than that. You have to have a good team as well, and like I've said this year since we won the Busch Grand National Championship, is that drivers don't win championships, teams do, and I found the team that like I said, likes to win, and it's really been a big help, and I'm glad I stuck it out.
Quickly, do you think it'll be easier or tougher to win it again in '91?
Well, we know we can do it now. I think we can do it 2 in a row. I really do. We're a good team, solid team.
We congratulate you on your success this year. Wish you more in 1991. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
That is Chuck Bown. When we come back, we'll have Chris Economaki's series on racing technology, and he too will be talking stock car racing. Stay with us. IndyCar owner and racing entrepreneur Carl Haas has been elected chairman of the board of the Sports Car Club of America. The 60-year-old Haas, who also sits on the board of the Kart IndyCar series, thus becomes the first man to hold executive positions with 2 major sanctioning bodies. In 3 weeks, this familiar scene will be repeated as the annual Paris to Dakar rally gets underway, and it now appears there will be a replay next fall. Officials in Tokyo have announced that the French capital will serve as starting point for the new Paris to Beijing marathon. The dates are September 1st through 24th. The 10,000-mile route will cross France, Germany, Poland, the Soviet Union, and China. Paris to Beijing will thus claim the title of the world's longest auto race. If you plan to drive, be sure and change your oil ahead of time. A Spanish driver-navigator team in a Japanese car has won the biggest automobile rally in Europe. Carlos Sainz and Luis Moya won Britain's famed Royal Auto Club Lombard Rally, completing Sainz' runaway with the World Championship. And one other international note, Mercedes sports car driver Michael Schumacher won the first race of the new International Formula 3 Series. He also won the annual F3 race in Macau a week ago. Back-to-back victories worth a $68,000 bonus. Now to Chris Economaki, editor-publisher of National Speed Sport News, whose continuing series on technology and racing focuses on Winston Cup.
When it comes to stock car racing, technology really is not wanted. It's the one form of racing that has not advanced technologically as much as the others. I'm with Alan Kowicki, a man with a mechanical engineering degree who was in stock car racing before the advent of technology, and I are in the middle of it. What has been the most significant change technology has brought to Winston Cup racing?
Well, I think the technology advances in Winston Cup racing are probably limited compared to other forms of racing. There are some data acquisition systems used, but they don't let us use them in the race or during any time during practice during a race event. It would have to be used during private testing sessions.
Everybody else in racing, Al, talks about computer usage. How important are computers in stock car racing?
Well, you know, I think the teams are starting to use them. I think there's more information that could be learned from them. I don't think the computer technology has infiltrated this sport as much as it has IndyCar racing or Formula One racing. I think that's probably the way NASCAR would like to see it stay. You know, right now, all the cars here are relatively the same, and it's a matter of their basic setup. In IndyCar racing or Formula One car racing, they're continually redesigning cars, coming up with new designs and obsoleting cars. I don't think they want to see that happen here in NASCAR racing. I think that's why the technological advances have been somewhat limited. I think it's changed a lot in the last couple of years, but not nearly as much as Formula One racing.
Years ago, Alan, how many adjustments did you have on a short track car, and how many adjustments do you have on your car today?
Well, I think years ago there were things like tire stagger and spoilers that guys didn't pay much attention to. They just put 4 tires on the car and that was it. And if a car had a spoiler on it, that was it. Now a couple of degrees of spoiler can make a difference. An eighth or a quarter of an inch of tire stagger can make a big difference. Those are the sort of things we pay a lot of attention to these days that mechanics weren't even aware of years ago.
And what about wind tunnels? Is that a big help? And what kind of costs are involved in wind tunnel usage?
Wind tunnel time is $1,200 an hour and up at most wind tunnels. We use a Lockheed wind tunnel in Marietta, Georgia, and Ford allows us to go there a couple times a year. We've learned things that, you know, I think the learning curve tapers off after a while. When we switched to the new body style a couple years ago, I think we learned a little bit. And then, you know, from year to year, you probably learn a little bit less as you get the car more refined.
From the crowbar and sledgehammer to the computer and all these gauges, what's happened to costs?
Well, the costs in Winston Cup racing have gone up a lot. It's not just because of technology. I think driver salaries have gone up, crew member salaries have gone up. The facilities that we work in are a lot more impressive than they were years ago. So the overhead is higher all the way around. I wouldn't say that technology has changed it a great deal.
All right, thank you, Chris and Alan. Next week, sprint car racing. You may not think of it as high-tech, but Chris's report may surprise you. Now, if the fan cam video that we've received this year is an accurate measure, sprint car racing is the most popular form of motorsports among amateur videographers. This week's offering comes from Alex Pantages of Mountain View, California, who favors the dirt oval at San Jose Speedway. The Golden State Challenge, September 29th, had great action right from the heats. Watch the 22 in red, Rod Spencer. He loses the lead to the 14 of Kevin Pliant and then takes the spot back as they come through turn 4. Down the front stretch, they roar into turn 1, and right on out of the ballpark goes Spencer. He was okay. The car, a junker. Spectacular. We'll come back a week later, watch the NARC cars in action. A bump and a spin, and Greg Brower launches over the berm and takes out a 20-by-20 section of the fence. Believe it or not, the car landed on 4 wheels. Brower kept it running and drove right on back to the pits. Nice shooting, Alex. Your fan cam jacket is on its way. Thanks to all of our fan cam shooters this year. We're going to try to put together a best of fan cam piece for the end of the year. Elsewhere, Chrysler's Mopar division has taken over sponsorship of the NHRA Summer Nationals at Englishtown, New Jersey. The annual 4th of July Drag Racing Classic will be the 9th round of the NHRA Winston World Championship Series. And Jim Ruth, the president of the International Hot Rod Association, died Saturday afternoon of cancer. In 1989, Ruth formed a partnership with Ted Jones to buy the IHRA from Billy Meyer. Jim Ruth was very much a racer. His Party Time Pro Stock car holds the IHRA ET and mile per hour records. Jim Ruth was 50 years old. We all know that corporate sponsorship, high-dollar drivers, and technological advances are established trends in the world of motorsports. Not much is going to change that. And our Benny Phillips thinks that's all fine with one exception. It's making the sport just a little too fancy for his taste.
I can't believe what I'm seeing in racing these days. Designer racing suits? Oh, come on. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the Andrettis are some of the best drivers in the country. But the Alexander Julian design suits they wore on the IndyCar circuit is just another example of how racing is becoming too polished, too neat for me. How about World of Outlaw champion Steve Kinser? Did anyone see his white suit at the Knoxville Nationals? Thank goodness that boy broke early, otherwise that suit would have been filthy. I fondly remember the days when drivers put all their money into the race cars, not designer uniforms. The days when racing styles were in, not uniform styles. The days when drivers were drivers and how you drove was more important than how you looked. Can you imagine Junior Johnson wearing a custom driving suit instead of coveralls? When Richard Petty took off his cowboy boots in favor of driving shoes, I was shocked. But then Dave Marcus promised me he'd never drive without his wingtips, so I guess I can live with the new styles and fancy footwear. Personally, I'm real concerned about this changing trend. Before you know it, fancy dress codes will be extended to the media. Well, excuse me now. I got to go to the press room.
Bibb and Tucker Benny. Looks like he's all set to go to the Winston Cup party at the Waldorf Astoria Friday night. Remember, we'll have the banquet for you live here on ESPN at 9 p.m. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Motorweek Illustrated. I'm Dave Despain. I'll see you next Monday night.